Hey y'all, glad to see the few of you here that is here at this time. And this is typically a small crowd. This time slot does not favor the majority of the Hobo Nation, and but we still like to do this to reach those in other time zones. So thank you for being here. And there is a going to be a special opportunity for those that are not patrons. If you're not a patron, but you've looked at some of the designs on Hobo with Wood and like, yeah, I'd like to have that, but I just don't want to spend that, or I like that, or you just didn't want to pull the trigger and buy that particular one, or you've had your eye on three or four different designs. Well, there's going to be an opportunity to save some money here in just a few. And this is going to be a fairly short live stream for me. I'm going to go over what Jack was kind enough to point out to me this week. A, a problem with the way this design being the music themed easel. This is the first time that I've done a design where I incorporated a two slots that interacted with each other to create a cross brace for reinforcement. And because of the way this design is in LightBurn, it creates a situation where it won't work with the resize slots and selection tool, and it doesn't identify correctly. And I'm and if you're too sensitive for humor, then plug your ears. I want to call this a trans slot. It identifies as a slot, but it's actually a tab. It's a trans slot. And there is no tool in LightBurn that deals with trans slots. So it does not identify correctly. It uses an improper pronoun, and so it just says, I ain't having none of this. So I'm going to show you that so that if you have already gotten this music easel, or if you're going to be doing designs yourself, show you what to watch out for and how you can identify what will potentially be a problem in your design process, and hopefully prevent you from having some same issues. There have been a lot of people who have downloaded this file, and no one has caught this except for Jack. So salute to Jack for catching this and pointing it out. And he and I had a great conversation this week as an opportunity to connect. And I seen he was in the comments, and he's in Scotland, and I'm over here in North America. And I enjoy being able to meet people in the Hobo community, in the Hobo Nation, and dialogue. And even though he understood me completely, I understood him 98% of the time. That Scottish accent is it's a little different than even, well, we're all unique in our own way, and I just haven't interacted with a whole lot of Scottish to have an ear for that yet. So, but I understood you most of the time, Jack, and I do appreciate you bringing that to my attention. So I see we got a lot of the same folks in here, and I'm glad for everybody that like I said, that have had an opportunity to tune in. This is, and I see Moses is here. Hey, Moses. And I think you said you were going to be checking out soon. Well, like I said, this is, if you don't get to watch this through to the point where I show and identify where the problem's at and how to correct it, make sure you come back and watch the replay. You've already made these and didn't seem to have a problem. But if you go changing the material thicknesses too great, then you will have an issue. And I also seen Chicago Bob's here today. Glad you're back, Chicago Bob. I'm glad you're feeling better. I hope you're feeling better. Hope things are all going well for you, and glad you're able to join us again. Let's see here. Just looking to see if there's any anything immediate. Oh, and this was kind of funny. Jack, which I said he's in the comments. He's here in the stream today. He's in Scotland, and I'm pretty sure Peter is from Scotland as well. And the two of them didn't know each other, hadn't met each other, and by being here in the streams and communicating with each other, they ended up communicating with each other and find out that they're only just a few kilometers away from each other. So even in this little bitty hobo nation, neighbors found each other. I thought it was kind of funny. All right, let's see here. Come on, look, just wanting to get down to the bottom of the comments. And there's a comment. Big shout out to Steve. Thank you so much for your help. Well, it did turn out really nice, and I was more than happy to help with that, because that was something else that I was talking with Jack about. Is like sometimes you just sit here and you look at the laser and you're like struggling for inspiration, or what am I going to do? What am I going to do next? So when folks reach out and say, hey, I've got a need for something, or, because designing an easel that would display something that comes to a point, yeah, no, that would not have ever come onto my radar. I never would have thought about something like that. That, like I said, that idea, that concept would have never appeared on my radar, ever. And there's Jack. Well, Chicago Bob says he just had a small case of pneumonia. Well, I'm glad you're back and able to join us in the stream. Pneumonia can be very, very serious. I'm glad it was a small case. And Peter says, hey, I got my Rolly on Thursday. Congratulations. You are going to be so happy with the quality of that laser. It is, in my opinion, second to none when it comes to diode lasers. All right. So turn that off and we'll mark a spot here. All right. And as I said, I'm going to discuss with you here in a few minutes a way for non-patrons to save a lot of money on hobowithwood.com. A special offer I'm going to do for you for this weekend, for everybody watching now in the live, or if you happen to catch the replay before Monday, because this will be a limited time offer for you guys who are watching this weekend. So about this design, if you've watched this week's video, I did a pretty good job explaining how it works, how to put it together, showing the assembly process. And this one is still not completely glued together. But there was a problem with one of the slots in here. And I want to show you. And after Jack pointed it out to me, I was like, oh. And I struggled with trying to figure out how to make it work with the tools in LightBurn. Never could. And so that's when I finally reached out to him and said, hey, let's get on line here and talk face to face, because I wanted to see what resolution he came to. How did he resolve it? And if he had figured something out that I hadn't. But unfortunately, he hadn't. And so we're going to share that with you now. And when you're designing, how not to put yourself into this situation, or when you do, what you need to be aware of how you're going to need to be able to correct it. But if you haven't seen the video, very, very briefly, this vertical support here is only attached to the treble clef, and that's a treble clef, with the two slots here. So it'll just lift off. It is not attached. There is a slot down there in the bottom, but that is actually to support your artwork. If you're using, you would actually adjust that slot to whatever thickness of material you're using. But this does not fit into that slot. It simply attaches to the two slots in the treble clef. And since that was the way it was, there's a lot of torsional pressure being applied to that treble clef. And if it was only using the two slots that are on the base of the treble clef, come on, it's not glued together. I had this problem in the other video. That's where I got my kerf really good. But if you were only using these two slots on the base of the treble clef to fit into the base of the stand right here, then you're going to have, it's going to want to move, side to side. It's not going to be very stable, especially once you add your back piece and any artwork on it. So I added an additional cross section so that it has 4 slots in it that sit in the base. And that cross section that runs through there is where the problematic slot exists. And the problem is because the way LightBurn works, the resize slots and selection tool only works with ungrouped items. If you have any part of your design that is part of a group, LightBurn will not recognize anything that is in that group, part of that group or in the group. So everything has to be ungrouped. So there it is, fully disassembled. And you see that is a slot that this piece, that slot, just slides into, and then they interlock with each other and push it down, and you're good. Well, when you go to resize your music note slot, it's not a problem. But this one is problematic. That one is my trans slot. Now let's go over here to LightBurn and take a look at this and see what's going on and why it's happening. And I've got LightBurn up, but I do not have the file up. So say new file. You want to save? No. Discard everything. Recent projects, music easel. Okay, now let's add you to the screen. Make you full screen. All right. So if you download the file as right now, and this is not something where switch wrong way, Conway. I got myself in a pickle here. Here we go. And this is not something that I can fix. I can't correct the file and then upload the new and improved file because of the way the design is. And I would love to hear back from you here in the stream if you say, you know what, instead of doing that, maybe you do this. If there's a better way to do this, because there's always another way. If there's a better way to do this, let me know in the comments. So let's see here. Switch. We get that back. There we go. So let's get this one out of here. And this piece, there we go. This is the problematic piece. And right now, I can tell by looking at all of the dots and dashes here that it is, none of this is grouped. Everything is currently ungrouped. And you can tell that by seeing just all dashes and no dots. If I were to have this treble clef, there's all the treble clef selected and it's grouped. You can see the dot, dot, dash, dot, dot, dash. And when I've got that selected and tell it to go to the tools and resize slots and selection, you get your warning that tells you your selection contains the following unsupported items, grouped shapes. So it's not going to show you anything in this group at all as far as being a slot or a tab. So it has to be ungrouped. Now, when you ungroup it and you select everything and you go to tools and resize slots and selection, and I want to change my tab height, and I've got we're going to say the old material there is 2.9. We'll go to 4 millimeter new thickness, and I've got a really high tolerance set up right now. Let's put it down to just a 0.5 millimeter tolerance. There we go. Now, if I look, that's going to bring this tab out, which we would want to go from 2.9 to 4. It needs to go out. That's a tab. It needs to go out. Same here. These would need to be enlarged. But if I look at slot width, nothing is acknowledged. Nothing in LightBurn recognizes, and I'm going to mute the phone here. There we go. Nothing's recognized as a slot, but this is a slot. That's the slot I just pointed out to you, and LightBurn does not recognize that as a slot. Now, there are a couple of things going on here, but if I increase my tolerance, watch what happens. Come on, baby. All right, tab height, and we're going to keep increasing. There we go. Now it's starting to recognize that as a tab. And it's not a tab. It's a slot. But actually, it is a tab. It's not a slot in LightBurn. In reality, in the application and the assembly process, it's a slot all day long. But in LightBurn, it's a tab. And whenever I put this together, I actually use the scissor tools instead of the weld tools. I had different objects and shapes in here. And by using the scissor tools, it ended up leaving some random nodes in here. And like that one there, that one is just, in fact, that distance is only 2/200ths of a millimeter. So it's irrelevant in the assembly process because that's less of a distance than your actual kerf would be. So that would not exist whenever you cut it out. It wouldn't be there. But that node could be eliminated. But it's by doing that, it actually changes the way that it works with the resize selection tool now. But in order for this to be resized, everything has to be ungrouped. And when you look at just that piece, it's not there. And when you look at just this piece, it's not grouped. But look, now you can see that is a tab. It is not a slot. That only appears to be and functions as a slot when they are grouped together. There's your slot. It's obvious that's a slot when you look at it that way. So in order to resize this, if you're going to use something other than, because right now the way it's set up for 2.9 millimeter material. And if you're going to be doing that out of something more substantial, you're going to be doing it, or you might, if you're using the Freiler hobowithwood.com/premium Baltic birch, which is Freiler Baltic birch, those pieces will come out anywhere from 2.8 millimeter to sometimes even as much as 3.3 millimeter. All the more reason you want to be miking your material before you put it on your laser if you're cutting out slots and tabs. But if you're using even the 3.3, then a 3.3 millimeter material is not going to fit in that 2.9 millimeter slot as is. So you're going to need to be able to modify this. And I'm going to show you that. But before I do, let me get in here, go back up to my mark, make sure, see if I ain't got any questions or comments I need to address along what we've already talked about. Let's see here. All right. Kevin says, got the hat. Thank you. Love it. Very nice. Very good. Carl, let's see here. All right. Mark this spot. All right. Back over to LightBurn. So in order to fix this, to resize this, since you cannot use the resize slots and selection tool, you're going to have to put in the correct size slot you need. And there's always another way. There's more than one way to do this. But one of the simplest ways to do it, and it's the way that Jack pointed out, is if your material is 3.3 millimeters, then you're going to make you a rectangle. And let's take a look at these measurements down here, right there. And that's not going to the top because there's that extra node in there. But that right there is 4.5. That's 4.5. And that's what I'd set it up as. So we're going to make this piece right here. We're going to make it 3.3 mil. Unlock our aspect ratio. Make it 3.3 millimeters, which is the actual thickness of the material we're using. And let's tell that to be 5 millimeters. That's going to be plenty tall enough to go up and above the rest of that. Now I need to have this. If I bring this down here, you see that it's not the right angle. You know, they're not lining up. Well, there's more than one way to do this. You could use your measurement tool to measure there. Say, okay, there's an angle of negative 0.81 degrees right there, negative 0.81 degrees. So you could take that and do the math to determine what the angle is, the difference to get from here, which if you look there, it says the angle is 180 degree positive. So the difference between 180 degree positive and negative 8.1, you do the math and figure that out. And then you can rotate that new rectangle using just the rotate function to put it at the right angle. But math is one of those 4-letter words. And sometimes it works okay up here and sometimes it don't. So instead of even bothering with the math, I'm going to use the control 2 function, control 2, to rotate it to the existing line that's there. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to bring this over here. Right now, all I want to do is get that angle right. So I'm putting that right there in that corner. I snapped that corner to the existing corner. And now with that new rectangle, that's the new one. With that one selected, I'm going to come back down there and I'm going to hit control 2. And I'm going to, yeah, right there. Say control 2. And then it gives you instructions down here. Select the first point, the center of rotation. So I'm going to select that corner. And then it'll give me more instructions. So get right there. And it says drag and click and drag the second point. So I'm going to come right over here on that line and then just drag it down to there till it snaps in place. Now that's oriented correctly at the right angle. And now if I come back in here and grab that, doesn't matter where I move it to because it's in the right orientation. But now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to find the center point of that right there. See how my cursor changed to where I got a dot? Now that I've got the dot, that's the center point of that bottom of that rectangle. And I'm going to drag that center point up here until I find right there. There's a second dot. There's the very center of that pre-existing slot. Now, it is a slot. No, it's not. It's a tab that identifies as a slot. So in order to create this tab that identifies as a slot, we're not going to subtract that. You could, because what? There's always another way. But if you're working with ungrouped items, you're going to weld that new piece to the single piece, welding in the new tab that once it's all grouped back together will be your new slot for your correct material thickness. So with that selected, hold shift and select that inner piece there and hit the weld tool, the Boolean weld function. And now that's resized to your correct material thickness. But there it is again. And just to show you, if these were grouped, we'll group those two pieces. Now that's grouped, and that is actually a slot and not a tab. Then with that selected, I would hold shift and select that new size and subtract it, and you get the same outcome. You've subtracted it from that group of pieces, making the new slot. And that's where a lot of people get really messed up with their Boolean functions about, do I need to add it or do I need to subtract it? Do I need the difference? Well, it all depends. Are you working with a group of items? Are you working with an individual piece? You know, because both adding it or subtracting it and welding it will give you the same result in this instance, depending on what you've selected and how it's grouped. So if you've already gotten well, it's all collapsed now, but if you've already downloaded the music themed easel, that's it's a problem in such that a way that it will not work with the resize slots and selection tool, not correctly. So I don't say that it's a problem with the design, because right now I can't think of a better way to reinforce that vertical piece there and give it some stability. How about you guys? I didn't see anybody say, hey, here's a better suggestion. Has anybody got an idea that would make this better than what I have here? Because and keep it simple, because like I said, there's always another way. And just off the top of my head, another way it could be done, because right now the center of the notes are not connected, and they go in and come out on either side of one part of the treble clef like that, and they're not connected to the treble clef in any way. They're free, they're independent of each other. There you go. You can see there. Another way it could be done is if that slot was relocated and you actually put a tab here and a tab on the note that actually attached to the side of the treble clef, and not having the internal slots in there, you'd have a tab here and a tab here. You'd actually have an individual note over here and an individual note over here, and that could work. You would just have to relocate where they're at, or make the notes larger so that they come up here in the design instead of down there in the void. Let's see, RC and Chicago Bob with his regular support. Thank you, sir. Chicago Bob says, don't forget to like, share, and go gold. And go gold, he's referencing patreon.com/hobo with wood. The gold sponsorships give you 100% off all digital files on hobowithwood.com. And this is a good opportunity to tell you about this week's special. And it's really targeting non-patrons, because patrons are already getting a better deal than this. But if you're not a patron and you're not one who wants to sign up and do monthly subscriptions, or it's just not in your budget to do much of anything right now, but you would like to take advantage of not only this file, but a lot of other files on hobowithwood.com, this weekend and this weekend only, I'm offering, patrons can do this, but it'd be silly for them to do it because they're getting a better deal already. If you go, in fact, let me go over here to the website, wherever it's at. There it is. Nope, that's not it. Come on. There we go. And there we go. And switch. If you go over to hobowithwood.com, and when you land on the page, the home page, you'll see all the new products. These are all the new digital files. There's where you'll find the music theme. And the latest file I upload will always be here in the top corner, top left corner. But if you go over to the menu page to adopt a hobo, adopt a hobo. Adopt a hobo has a couple of different ways that you can support hobowithwood.com. One, there's the link to the Patreon if you want to become a regular Patreon supporter or patron and a patron on Patreon and support the channel. But if you want to do a one-time donation to PayPal, you can do it through this link. But if you use Zelle, and most of all of your banking apps already have Zelle built into your banking app, when you use Zelle to send your friend or family member money through Zelle, they get 100% of the money, and it doesn't cost you anything to send money through Zelle, and it obviously doesn't cost them anything. It's through the banking system, and it's completely free. And most of the banking apps already have it. So if you went into Zelle or go to Zelle.com to find Hobo with Wood, you would simply send it to my email, which is right there at the bottom. Prefer to use Zelle? I do too. Send to hobowithwood@gmail.com. If you send it to that to my email through Zelle, it will come to me. And this is what's mind blowing. Not only is it 100% free, but it's instant. It's done. So if you used Zelle, it benefits me because there's no transaction fee. PayPal takes 1.3 or whatever they take. They take a processing fee for their credit card processing. But the offer is, and this is this weekend only, whether you're watching it now in the live stream or if you're watching this on the replay. If you send, you go over to Hobo with Wood and you send me a donation right now this weekend, either through PayPal or through Zelle, whatever your donation amount is, I will generate a special coupon code for three times your donation amount. So if you send me $25, I'm going to send you a coupon for $75 worth of free files on hobowithwood.com. Okay. So that's actually a little bit better deal than the bronze is getting because they get 60% off. Silver is 80% off. Gold's free. But right now, this weekend only, if you do a donation through PayPal or Zelle, I will create a special one-time use coupon. It'll be a one-time use. So if you've been on a Hobo with Wood and you said, man, there's about 5 or 6 different things I'd like to have, but man, that's $25, $30. Well, if you sent me a donation for a third of that, then I'm going to send you a coupon that would be good enough to cover your total cost on all of those. So this week only. I'm hoping that enough of you jump on board and take advantage of that. That once this live stream ends today, I'm going to be going to dinner with family, and then I will come back in probably tomorrow. And plus, I'm hoping there'll be a few on the replay that catch this. So I'll be generating those coupon codes tomorrow and get those out tomorrow evening. Tomorrow being Sunday, and you'll be able to take advantage of those. So. And Chris says he's testing something. Let's see here. Sharon, if you made the treble clef into a single, then maybe the slots and tabs. How would you make that a single object? You can group them, and they are one object. But when they're grouped, LightBurn doesn't recognize objects in a group in the resize slots and selection tool. So grouping it and making it one object, and that's how you can change. Do you want to add it or subtract it with the Boolean tools? But when they're grouped, the resize slots and selection tool doesn't recognize any of them. That doesn't recognize slots, tabs, any part of that group. And like I said, Chris says he's be right back. He's testing something because Chris is he's a LightBurn guru. He's hopefully he might be coming up with an idea. And Chicago Bob said, yeah, Zelle rocks. I'm telling you, Zelle, and there it is through the banking system, and it's through the government. So it's just another way for them to track your money. They're tracking what you do with your money, who you're sending it to, who's got it, how much money everybody's getting. So it's, there's a trade-off. They ain't charging any money for it, but they're able to track what you're doing a whole lot easier too. But, in today's world, we're all sacrificing some of our privacy for convenience. Don't you need a mobile phone to set up with PayPal? No, you can go to, if you're on your computer and you go over to hobowithwood.com and simply click that link right there. This is on my computer. If you click that link, it's going to take you to PayPal and let you do through PayPal on your computer. PayPal is not strictly a cell phone app. And no, Peter says, yeah, we don't have Zelle in Scotland. No, and because it's probably just another way for the U.S. government to keep up with how us Yanks are using and spending and moving our money around. And no, Stanley, yeah, and I didn't even think about that, because this time slot is largely to appeal for you folks across the pond and the other hemisphere, Eastern hemisphere. So yeah, Zelle probably won't be an option for you, but PayPal is. And regardless, whatever your donation amount is, if you send $10 through PayPal and I get $9.20, or I get $8, I'm going to do 3 times of your donation amount. So if you send 10, I'm going to create a coupon for $30, regardless of their processing fees. No, Jeff's asking for if it's going to, in fact, put up here, will the coupon work for physical items too? No, only for the digital files. Yeah, I couldn't afford to. I've still got a few of the crystal hearts here, and I got some of the specialty boards that's still here. But no, I couldn't afford to take a hit right now on physical goods like that. So yeah, it's strictly digital. Oh, wait a minute. We got a comment from Chris here. What's Chris saying? Confirm this. Set treble clef to fill and resize works for me. So you're saying if treble clef is in fill mode and it's all ungrouped with the original file, it recognizes that as a slot? That will be interesting. Here's something that another thing that we all may be putting in a 1 or 2 or 3. And Sharon immediately commented, I thought there was a way to create it as a single object, but I can't remember what it was called. I'll have to look. And Sharon, it might be what Chris is talking about. So let's get over here and let's test this, and I'm gonna come back to these comments. Chris and Sharon. All right, go back over here to LightBurn. All right, and I'm going to switch. First thing I'm going to do is go back to the original file. So we're going to say File, New, discard everything, open up the original file, Recent, Music Easel. All right, so there is the original file. And let's just grab all of the treble clef, bring this over here and put it in a fill mode. And it's all ungrouped. And that was 2.9 millimeters wide. And if I understand Chris correctly, if I go in here to resize slots and selection, it is a slot and it's 2.9. And I'm going to go to 3.5, but I've got the material tolerance at 1.85 and it still doesn't recognize that. 0.02, and then let's just hold that down and start bringing it up. Because at some point, I think it begins to recognize something because of those mysterious nodes. But no, it's not doing anything there. But now he's got me curious. Is it because of the nodes? And those random nodes is because I use the scissor tools when I was creating this whole piece. So I want to try something here. I'm going to do this. Cancel. Let's come right over here to the side and just do a box and a box. And now let's put that in there, and let's weld those. So now there is, it didn't weld them. Window, wireframe. All right. So there, center, top, and weld. Oh, subtract, dummy. Undo, subtract. There. Is that right? Nope, that's not right. I need to do this. I just need to bring that down in here. There we go. So there, I've got 4, should be, if I look at that, nodes, not tabs, nodes. Yeah, so I got 4 nodes, no random mysterious nodes. And trying to figure out if I got that. I still ain't got that set up. I'm trying to replicate that in a way that so that is inside the other piece. I was right to begin with. Yeah. And that's a tab. And now let's see and let's put it back in. It's in fill mode, but let's change the view to fill so everybody sees it's in fill. Go to tools, resize slots and selection. And when we look at slot width, what is that slot width? Didn't check it before 7.2 mil. Tools, resize slots and selection. 7.2, and it is a slot. Oh, looky there. That is working. And let's change the view. That's interesting. It's still in fill mode, but I'm just changing the view to wire so you can see it better. So tools, resize slots and selection, slot width. There we go. It's changing the slot width to 7.2, or from 7.2 to 3.5. So that works. Let's change our tolerance to 0.5. Still works because that's what I expect it to be. All right, now that's interesting. And that's why I say Chris is a guru. All right, so, and like I said, I'm still learning. I'm learning every week. I did not know that was going to be a problem when I created the design. But now what I want to test, we just seen that work while it's in a layer that's in fill mode. I'm going to put it back over to line mode and see if this works in line mode. And maybe it's because of the arcs of the treble clef. I don't know that it's being a problem, but let's go put this in line mode and see what happens. So cancel this. It's showing in line mode, but remember I changed my window view to wireframe. So if I put it back in field, you'll see there it's filled. So but let's put all of that in a true line mode. Go back to tools, resize slots, and I don't forgot what my size was. 7.2. All right, so select both of those. Tools, resize slots and selection. All material thickness is 7.2. Slot width. Yeah, see, it recognizes that now, Chris, even though it's in line mode. changing the slot width. I wonder if this was a curve. Do the arcs have something to do with it? Tools, resize slots and selection. No, it still recognizes that. So I'm bumfuzzled as to why that's an issue. Because even though those random nodes are in the design, there are 4 nodes there that are perpendicular to each other. And if it would seem like, okay, if it's going to work, well, if it didn't work all the way up because that one node is a little bit below the arc, well, then it would just change it in those lower 4 nodes. But it don't even do that. But I've never run into this problem before until I had a slot that wasn't a slot. It was a tab. That was weird. I'm now confused because I played with this with Jack and all, and I never got that to actually work doing that whenever I was experimenting prior to connecting with Jack. Okay. Jack says, with regard to the design, I wouldn't have explained it any better myself, Steve. Well done, sir. Well, thank you. Thank you very kindly, sir. Chris says PayPal is either phone or email. Yeah. Yeah, but you don't have to do it from a phone. You can do it through an email on your computer. And thank you, Moses. Brother, you didn't need to do that. I greatly appreciate you. And Chicago Bob says he sent me an email. Nope, it didn't work in 1.7.07. What didn't work, Chris? I may end up just needing to send you another link to join in here. So yes, it did. I'm confusing myself. And Brad says tie score, 1 for Hobo, 1 for Chris. Brother, I don't keep score. I really don't. Keeping score gets you in trouble. Try your test with circles. Yeah, let's see if the arc, but it may be not that the arc, because I just tried those arcs and it didn't seem to matter any. It may be because of the way I created the piece using the scissor tools, but that still should have, those 4 nodes should have been recognized as a slot regardless of the other nodes around it. At least that's been my experience. Yeah, because it thinks it's a tab. The 4 nodes are not parallel. There are 4 nodes that are parallel with it. In fact, let's go. Let's see. Could you do a 0 offset of the part with the slot? Well, the problem without the extra nodes, then they're not going to be parallel to each other, and it wouldn't even recognize it at all because they are askew. So doing the 0 offset, yes, it would get rid of the nodes, but it wouldn't make it definitely not parallel. Let's see here. Switch, cancel, or just say okay, get rid of it. What's going on here? There we go. Computer was not responding. There we go. Delete that. Get rid of that. And let's rotate this and get it setting correctly. And I'm going to come down here. Put that right on the corner. Let's make sure all this is grouped. And Control 2. get that point and rotate this point to the line. There we go. All right, now that's all straight up and down. Now, if I put that in line mode and go into nodes and ungroup it, these nodes grab a toolpath. Can I grab it? No, it ain't gonna let me. There we go. There. There. And now go back to node editing. See, those nodes are parallel to each other, and those nodes are parallel to each other. If I had it rotated correctly, I missed my rotation there, or I don't have my tool lined up. And ain't letting me do the selection while I'm in node editing. There we go. Now nodes. There we go. There. Oh, no, that is off just a tiny bit, or I don't have it rotated right. Let's check my rotation. Control 2. I got that just right. And let's get in here real tight. There. Now I know for a fact that those nodes are parallel to each other. And there to there. All right, that's not where I want it. If I get that one. And you can't see the nodes. Aggravating. There. So there's on the node. And there's the node. Yeah, I thought they were all parallel. So even if I delete that guy right there, delete that node, and those 4 nodes are all parallel to each other. And let's get rid of those. Get rid of that one. Check the material thickness. It is 2.91. And whenever I try to look at that as a slot, tools, resize slots and selection, 2.91 is its original, and there's slot width. It does not recognize that as a slot. And those nodes are all parallel to each other. And just for giggles, let's get rid of that node up here at the top. Because I tried all this. I tried all this whenever Jack and I worked on this together and before I even called Jack. So let's put a node right here for a second. Insert that one. I'm going to bring it down to about there, and I'm going to delete that one. So now that one's not above. Those are all parallel to each other, and let's go ahead and get rid of that one, even though that one should be completely irrelevant. Now there is just 4 nodes there. None of it's grouped. It's 2.9 millimeters. Resize slots and selection tool. Slot width, 2.9, and it does not recognize those. But now what's funky is if I increase my tolerance and just keep increasing it and increasing it and increasing it, it's still not, I'm all the way up to 4.5 now and doesn't recognize anything. Change my tab height. It's recognizing that as a tab, but it will not recognize it as a slot. So I don't know why that it's not working in that particular configuration. All right. Mark says, could it be? Isn't that a Beatles song? No, that's Let It Be. I don't know. Does the scissors mode leave artifacts. Scissor tool can leave some odd artifacts, like that piece where it had that funky little node sticking out there. It did do some funkiness there, but that's just because of the way they were aligned initially. So I had in the initial concept, I had a rectangle below the arc of that inside piece of the treble clef, and I was using the scissor tools to cut away the pieces I didn't want. And because it was that arc that was there, it left a piece that was hanging out there by 2/100ths of a millimeter. So it wasn't a perfect straight line, but it was 2/100ths of a millimeter. It's definitely not going to make any difference whenever you go to put that together using 2.9 millimeter material. But it could, or not only that, it could affect the tool working. When that little strange artifact was sticking out there, LightBurn there, I just showed you that it recognized it as a tab, but with that little bit of an artifact sticking out there, it could recognize it as a tab, or actually it recognized it as a tab in two directions. It never recognized it as a slot. But with that oddball artifact out there, it recognized it as a tab vertically and horizontally. It was very, very weird, strange. And again, I haven't seen a better solution for doing something like this other than don't do it. Find another way than using an internal slot. Like I said, if I'd have done a slot on the bottom of the notes and a slot on the flag of the notes that went into the sides of the treble clef, it could have potentially had the same amount of support. I don't think it would have been quite as strong because you got two separate pieces that are being now glued to that instead of one solid piece that goes down. So I like the strength of this design better, I think. But it wasn't because of the scissors. It was where the placement of the pieces were at while I was using the scissor tools. Are the sides of the slot of the treble clef equal in length? Would it affect the ability to detect the slot? Are the sides of the slot of the treble clef? Don't quite follow you there, Mark. The sides of the treble clef. Oh, yeah, no. I just made those. That's why you had the initially, while there was a little bit of variance in the nodes, there was an extra node on the left side. That extra node was there so that those sides were the same length. From that second node on the left side to the bottom, it was the same distance as it was on the right side to the bottom. And where that would be an issue is if you were going great distances, then it would move that in underneath that second node, and then you might have a little bit of a teardrop or point that would stick out that did not get resized. But I wasn't expecting, or actually, I didn't even see that. I did not see that until Jack pointed all those out to me. That totally escaped me when I was checking the design before I sent it to Moses. Led Zepp says, I just moved from using laser Gerbil and Inkscape to LightBurn. Since upgrading my laser, LightBurn is a breeze in comparison. I've still got them. Yeah, there is, and I have never used any other software. I'm not familiar with Gerbil. I'm not familiar with the Inkscape. That my only, and this is funny. It was so ironic. The only thing, my only other software I've ever used, and it's the same boat that Jack was in. The only other graphics design I ever used was Corel Draw, and it goes all the way back to Corel Draw, and Corel Draw 7, I think, was the highest I ever got, and they're different versions. They're probably, if even Corel's still doing anything, they're probably at Corel Draw 52 or something, or 12052. But I used to do vinyl graphics and used Corel Draw to do that. And that Corel Draw was the only thing I've ever used prior to seeing LightBurn. And LightBurn is an awesome tool. And I forget who it was. I don't know if it was I don't know if it was Brad or if you'd seen something, because there was some comments that I had made in regards to, oh, it was about the updates. I would like to be able to see the changes that from with the new updates prior to updating, because with updates you can periodically get bugs that the updates calls, and whoever it was, whether it was Brad, if it wasn't you, I'm sorry. Someone kind of took it as like, oh well, man, LightBurn's great. It shouldn't, negative comments. Well, it wasn't a negative comment. I just like to see, because LightBurn is an awesome tool. I wouldn't want to use anything else when it comes to designing for my laser. I just like to see the changes prior to downloading them. Question from Jack, because it's inside a line. Yeah. The tab, it's a tab, not a slot. Or if it's outside the perimeter of the shape, it's a tab, and if it's inside the perimeter, it's a slot. We talked about that. Chris says, in the original, I had my fill as red, so couldn't see that extra node. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is it still reading that as more than 4 nodes as slots there were? So this is where my strokes rear their head in different ways. The side effects of my strokes. Reading is one of them. I can talk to you most of the time without having too much of an issue, but reading is always an issue. And if I'm stressed, then sometimes I can come across like I'm a drunk skunk. The more stress I got on me, the more of a speech impediment I get. But Brad says, is it still reading that as more than 4 nodes for a slots there? And maybe it's not me reading. I don't understand that, Brad. Is it still reading that as more than 4 nodes for a slots there, though? No. Yeah, I don't understand that one. Either some punctuation missing or too many words in there. I don't follow you there, Brad. Is it still reading that as, is it still reading it as more than 4 nodes? Yeah, I don't follow you, Brad. Don't follow you. Yep. And whenever you try to select just the piece that the slot's attached to, it's not a slot, it's a tab. And you can change the tab height. And this is what I was thinking about. I knew I had a solution for LightBurn, but I couldn't figure out how to word it. I told this to Jack. Jack, if you're still here, this is the 4th option that we need in the resize slots and selection tool. Ding, 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 ding. Boop, boop. Light bulb. All right. So switch that off and swim back over here. Right now, in the resize slots and selection tool, you have 3 options: slot depth, slot width, and tab height. Well, since you cannot do these as a group, you have to ungroup it. And when you ungroup it, it will only recognize this as a tab. And here it's allowing you to change the tab height. But I don't want to change the tab height because that's going to affect how it fits and interlocks with this piece here. I need to change the tab width. So if there was an option over here, a 4th option that was tab width, and then I could say, okay, cancel that, cancel. Why is my mouse not wanting to respond? Cancel. I'm able to scroll, but it's not letting me there. Okay. My mouse has got a mind of its own. So if I was able to measure that and say, okay, there's my size is 2.91, and I want to go to tools, resize slots and selection. Old material thickness is 2.91. New material thickness is 3.5. And a 4th option, I want to change my tab width. And then it would select that and change the width of it and make it wider. That would make it work. The problem with that would be whenever you have multiples. If you've got 7 or 8 or 10 tabs sticking out there, you make sure you that could end up creating a problem that would mess up your whole design if you're not careful. But tab width, because it's actually a slot and it don't recognize it, it only recognizes it as a tab. You would need to change the tab width and make that work. Is it time to ask the gang at LightBurn? Does open or close shapes affect recognize? Yes, I'm pretty sure it will. Let's test that. I said yes, like I knew, but let's not be a fountain of knowledge. Let's test that. Auto. So the question is, if it was an open shape, would LightBurn still recognize it? So I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do that. If I've got a slot, I want to subtract it, dummy. There. So there's a slot, and that is a closed shape, because if I come up here to edit and look, closed path is not an option. So I'm going to go into node editing, and I'm going to break it right here. By putting that break in there, I never moved that, but by putting that break in there, if I come up here to edit and look, now closed path is an option because it's open. And now that it's open, if I check that slot depth at 7.92 millimeters, go to tools, select it, go to tools, resize slots and selection. And I've got it covered up right now. That's great. Let's put in here 7.92 is the old material thickness, and we want to make it 4 millimeters. And we can set our tolerance to just half because we know exactly what it is. And it's slot depth that we're looking to. And look right there. Yeah. Shapes that are not closed. I didn't even look at that. And guys, that right there should probably be your first thing you pay attention to when you open up the resize slots and selection tool, is look in this warning. This is where they put in a warning in here if anything, because if I move this out of the way, you see it doesn't recognize it because it tells you shapes that are not closed. So that warning section in that tool, it might be great if that was highlighted, or maybe if the text was in red. So you should, because I've been doing this now since this tool came out, and I can and that was a while ago, and it's an awesome tool to be able to resize slots and selection tool. But even to this day, I don't always pay attention to that warning area, and you should. But there it gave you the warning that shapes are not closed, and no, it will not recognize it. So, Kevin, does open and closed shapes affect recognizing slots and tabs? Sharon says, why is the nodes section between the top of the slot to the right still green like the slot and not red like the rest of the shapes? I'm lost there. Why is the node selection? Why is the nodes section between the top of the slot? And this is where we're not since we're not interacting live with each other, I'm not sure when you even posted this or which piece you were talking about. And not red like the rest of the shape. Yeah, Sharon, I'm because I've gone down enough tangent. I don't know where you've seen that at. More information and we can look at that. I'm happy to explore whatever. So cancel that. But I'm not sure where you and when you've seen what you've seen. When you create the slot tab and weld it to the line is the inner piece and not the outer part of the design. Yeah. Yeah. And But if I don't know why LightBurn doesn't recognize them when they're in a group, but the fact that it's ungrouped is what makes LightBurn not recognize it as a slot. If it would recognize the group shapes and see that, then it has to be a slot. And Brad says he's wondering the same thing, but I need to know where and what we referring to, guys. Replace the slot with a new one and then try resizing it. We did that, Jay. But let's come over here and but it's because of where it's located. Like as Jack was saying, it's there we go. That's centered up there. And if I say, and these are not grouped, so I'm going to have to say, I'm going to group these temporarily. Now that they're grouped, I'm going to say A, subtract that. And that put a new slot in there. And I did it big enough so that it got rid of all those arbitrary pieces. If we go back to nodes, there's only a node, one single node there and one single node here. But the problem here I can see without checking is because that's an arc that comes across there, there's a good chance that those, and they're not, that node is not parallel to that node. If I draw a line from there to there, see how the difference in height? So that would not allow it to work that simple because you got different links there. That node would need to be down here on that toolpath. And you could drop that down and move it. But before we do anything, with those two selected, they're not grouped. Well, let's see what the width is. The width is 4.2. And that's our ultimate goal. We're not needing to change the depth. We're needing to change the width. And so they're at 4.2 wide. Tools, resize slots and selection. The old material thickness is 4.2, and we want to go to 3. And slot width, it's not changing anything there at all. Tab height. Just want to change our tab height, but we don't want to change that. Slot width, it don't recognize that as a slot. Chris says slots don't need side by side to be equal. Tabs do. Okay. Okay. Well, there we seen there that, you know, they're not, well, that kind of goes against what you just said there. They're not equal. At least the top two are not parallel to each other, but the bottom two are. And so it was still wanting to change the depth of that change the height of that tab or the depth of that. When you got a slot that's not a slot, it can be problematic. We've learned that. So I think going forward on any of my future designs, I probably will not do that. I would change it so that there was a tab here and a tab on that flag that actually went up, because I could have made that flag taller right there. I could have made that note bigger, bring that to where that flag had a tab on it that went right in here to the side of that. And it would have been a non-issue because there'd been a slot there and a tab on the flag. So don't do slots that aren't slots. I think that's the big lesson here. I thought I saw more than 4 nodes in the same shape when you were in node. Depend on the original piece, there are more than 4 nodes. But there are four, and let's go look at this again, because a few people have said I've seen, because I want you to see what happens, because we just see it never works the way you want it to. Regardless, it never does what you want it to do. But the reason that I didn't catch this is because it does do something. And those extra nodes are what cause it to do what it does when it does what it does. So I'm going to go back out of this. I'm going to say file, new, don't save, discard. Let's bring that project back in here again. Now, this is the piece with the extra nodes in there from using the scissor tool. I didn't use Boolean, and when I use the scissor tool, in fact, all I need is just this. We'll get it all. I'm not going to bother squaring it up, but if we go into node editing, there's a node. And if you weren't watching it here earlier, that node, if I was to square this up, that node and those two nodes, they are parallel to each other. But those funky little things right there, this one, I think this one is the culprit that makes this work. But watch what happens if I use, what was it, 2.91? Yep, 2.91. And I'm going to select that piece only. Go into Tools, Resize Slots and Selection. Tools, dummy. Resize Slots and Selection. 2.91. And is the old material thickness. And the new material thickness is going to be 3.5. And we want to change the tab height, slot width. Nothing's getting recognized there. But we'll go to tab height and let's change our tolerance. And I'm going to put the tolerance way out there. I'm going to go way out there. 4 millimeter. There you go. 4 millimeter tolerance. And look, it's willing to move that in both directions. And that's happening because of that node right there. And that, because it's recognizing that from there to that extra node down here, it's recognizing that little bitty piece of that as its own separate tab. Then it's got this whole thing as a tab, but just that side is its own individual tab. Because if I hit cancel, go into node editing and get rid of that node right there so it doesn't have that little piece, that 2/100ths of a millimeter, 2/100ths of a millimeter. In fact, let's do that. Before I get rid of it, go into the Tools, Resize Slots and Selection, Old Material Thickness, 0.02, 2/100ths of a millimeter. And I'm going to leave it at 3.5, and let's put our tolerance back to 0.5, half a millimeter. Tab height, no. Let's see. Oh, did it not let me do the old material thickness of 0.02? No, it will not let me put in 0.02 as a material thickness. But that's what it was picking up on. It was picking up on that distance of 0.02 millimeters as being its own separate tab. So it's not letting me try and recognize that. But that's what it was doing. Because, so cancel that, get rid of that node. So now it doesn't have that option. And now when we go into the Resize Slots and Selection, tab height, increase it to 4 mil. There you go. See, now it's only moving in one direction. Because that extra node up there was allowing LightBurn to recognize that as its own tab and moving it out. So it was moving that tab down and that extra tab out. So there's a request we can put in to be able to resize tab width in the Resize Slots and Tabs tool. Either that or for the tool to work with group. Yeah, that one of those two things would be be a good thing to have, but my hesitation on saying you want to add or have the ability to resize tab width is when you have multiple tabs along a design. Is it going to be a problem? Here, we can test that. We can test that. Let's go back over here. Okay. And let's make this 25 by 5. And let's put it in the center at the top. And then say A. Actually, let's duplicate that first. Control D, duplicate it, move that up here. And in fact, you know what? Let's go ahead and we're going to duplicate all of it. In fact, I'm just going to select everything there and duplicate it. Now I'm going to select the top duplication. That's A. Hold shift and select the top duplication there. That's B, and subtract it. Now move that over here out of the way. And now I'm going to take that duplicate, move it up there, and select that, Alt Shift V for vertical alignment, and weld it. And there, I don't need that anymore. All right. So those two would fit together. That was rotated around. There you go. Those two would fit together. But if you had multiple pieces, we're going to test and see if this would be if it would still work. Selecting both of these, and that was 25 by 5, right? So if we go to Tools, Resize Slots and Selection, old material thickness, we're going to say 5 mil. We want it to be 3 mil new and a 0.5 tolerance. So it's checking my slot depth, slot width. We're going to get to that in a minute. Tab height, we can change our tab height. So changing slot depth and tab height, those are going to work together. But now, if I go over here to old material thickness and say 25, because remember that was the thickness of, or the width of that rectangle. So old material thickness is 25 millimeters, and I want it to make it 30. And we're going to change our slot width. There you go. So yes, you can change slot width. And if you had the ability to change tab width, because here we cannot adjust this one without tab width to match that new width of that piece. All right. So yeah, I believe tab width is what we need, Chris. So use your pull and slam that home. Maybe test that and play around with it. Is there a reason or an occasion why tab width would not be a good thing to have? If you can change slot width, then you need to be able to change tab width. And if we could change tab width, then it would have made all of the problems go away that Jack and I have encountered and found in this original design. All right, the difference between the red and green nodes, if that's what you're talking about, the green node is your origin node. It's my understanding. You have every shape should have one green node, and that's the origin node, where that object originates from. If you ever have an object that shows two green nodes, then that's an open shape. If that's what you're referring to. So let's see here. Oh, and Jack says Corel Draw 2025. So was that the year when 07? Was I using Corel in 2007? Because I remember Corel 7. Maybe that's how they do it. That was the year? So 18 years ago. All right. Back to the green and red nodes. Cancel. Delete that. And we've gone a whole lot longer than I thought I was going to go today. And guys, I appreciate you guys hanging out here with me today. All right. Now this, because I drew it from the rectangle tool, when I go to node editing, there will be no nodes. You have to convert it by right click and convert to a path, and then you'll see nodes. And see there, you got one green node, and then the rest of those are grayed out. If I come up here and I hit the letter B for break, well, it changed the two. Oh, because it broke. It broke the shape. It's no longer a closed shape, but it's still one shape. So there's one origin node. By me hitting the break, I changed where that origin point is. So you've still only got one node. So if I grab that node, you can see there, now you've got two. You've got a beginning and an end. So actually, I take that back. Take that back. There were two green nodes there, but they were overlapping each other, so it only appeared as one. Whenever it's an open shape, you're going to have two green nodes. If you're only seeing one, it's because they're overlapping each other. And when you've got an open shape, go to that green node, grab one. In fact, let's say Control Z, put that back. There we go. You don't see it, but there are two green nodes right there. And that is an open shape. So grab that green node and then pull it back and snap it right in place. And that should, tools, edit. Yeah, see, that closed the path. Closed path's not an option. So that is now closed again. But if and your origin node plays a factor in where your laser will start engraving and or cutting. Because right now this piece is there. My origin is up there in the top left. If for some oddball reason, if I'm really, really crazy, wanting to be controlling about my laser and I want it to start down here, I come down here, hit B for break. That moved that origin down here. Now I can grab that node and snap it back together. Now that origin is down there. It is a closed path again, and I've moved where that origin was, or I can rotate it. If I grab my rotation tool and rotate that and go back and look at my node editing tool, now it's up here. So that's the difference, Andy and Sharon, about the green nodes, is they are your origin nodes. I don't know if that's what you guys were referring to, but that's that. Warnings, yeah, warnings in color can be oh, really? Based on your if you're okay. Warnings in color can be going. Chris is referring to us, maybe if the warnings in the select in the tool, the resize slots and shape tool, if they were bright red, hey, warning, warning, warning. Well, maybe they need to be maybe if not colored, but maybe you have flashing lights and say, hey, stupid, look down here. Yeah, and Jay said green node would indicate the starting point of your cut. Yep. A quicker method would be to warp a piece of wrap a warp. A quicker method would be to wrap a piece of sandpaper around a popsicle stick, and widen the slot. Yeah, it would work. But if you were going from 3 millimeter to 4.5 millimeter, you could still do it. Just be a lot of sanding. There's always another way. Always another way. Chris says the tabs / slots was answering questions in chat. Okay. They actually took out tab width and beta testing because of multiple tabs usually doing boxes. Yeah, and that's where I was wondering. There I did, because I in my test piece there, I added one tab. I had one tab, one slot, and that would work. But that's what I was wondering. If you had multiple tabs and slots, how would it adversely affect your design? And I'm curious about that. And we're only 90 minutes in. Right now we're at our average live. Let's just go look and see what happens. So I don't know what I got here, so I'm going to get rid of it, and I'm going to say here, and I'm going to use my my quick cube technique. Let's make aspect ratio locked, say 120, and let's do this tab width is going to be 120 divided by 5, and we're going to unlock that now and make that 5 and put that in the left top. And how much is that? It's 25 mil. So I'm going to set my move tab to 25 mil with my arrow. And I'm going to say Control D, duplicate that, move it, Control D, move it. All right. So those are properly placed. I'm going to group those. And actually, you know what? I don't want to do it that way. I want to put them on the inside. So I'm going to take that back. I'm going to delete those. I'm going to move that one over 25 mil, Control D, duplicate it, and move that over. There we go. I'm going to do it like that. Duplicate those, move them up. And now actually I need to group those. Subtract. That'll give me multiple slots. And I should have duplicated that first. Now, subtract. And then let's make sure that these are properly placed. We'll arrow them down a little bit and then say that plus that, Alt Control V, and weld those. Oh, I don't have them grouped. Dummy. Well, I'll do them one at a time. Weld, and then move that one up. Oh, can't do it that way. Well, I should have grouped them to begin with. Group. Alt Shift. Nope, got to select it. Alt Shift V, and now weld. There we go. So now I've got 2 tabs and 2 slots, and they're 25 mil or 24 mil. And the question is, how will it affect it? And I'm going to make the adjustment really big. Tools, resize slots and selection. Old material thickness is 24 mil. And let's make it double that size. We're going to go to, oh no, well, let's see what happens. 60 mil. And our slot width. All right. And there, I didn't change that so it wouldn't recognize it as a slot. So before I do anything, I need to fix it so that that is not a slot by putting a node there. And that is not a tab by putting a node there. Now tools, resize slots and selection, and 60 mil slot width. That's going to be they're going to be way too, and I over exaggerated it on purpose. Let's go to 48, double it. 48 is going to put them right against each other. So if we went to 40, all right. If you did, and you would have to be careful about it. But I still think as long as you know what you're doing when you do it, you should still be able to use that, because there, if I got my slot width, I've changed that and apply it. And if I was able to change my tab width, it would change those accordingly. I see where it could. I think either way you've got problems. When you want to do single pieces like I've got here, well, you can't do it because it's not an option. When you got multiple pieces, and if you're not paying attention to what you're doing, and as you just seen, because I didn't initially designate those as non-tabs and non-slots, well, it was going to move things around that you didn't want it to move anyway. So I think it's just a matter of really having a really good grasp on how that tool works. And tab width would still be a good option to have. And recognizing that there are going to be cases that if you're not paying attention, you could ruin the whole design. So I think it should be there. That in my humble opinion. Let's see here. For this file, maybe include a note saying that the particular slot would have to be adjusted manually. Yep. Yeah, and like I said, this is and I can do that with this file. But for future designs, I'm just going to steer clear of tabs that function as slots, because that's what this is currently with the way LightBurn is designed. That's a tab that thinks it's a slot. I said nodes, but I should have said lines. Okay. Don't know when you said what you said about what you said that was wrong. This doesn't stay. It doesn't retain a lot. Right here, right now, I got you. But back in the stream, I'd have to go back and find what you're referring to, Andy. Well, Bob's World, I'm glad you think so, because this is and we'll dive in and explore and test and try things. But this was to address a problem with the design that I've never run into before. And it's simply because LightBurn doesn't have that ability to recognize tab width. And I have a tab that's a slot. So I was talking about the green line just above the right side of the slot. You have to zoom in quite a bit. All right. The green line that was just above the right side of the slot. Let's see, cancel that. And I'm assuming you're talking about on the original treble clef. Selector tool. And I know you can't see what I'm doing right now because I'm trying to figure out what it is she's seeing when she sees what she sees. Talking about the green line just above the right side of the slot. Yeah. Oh, you know what might be? What you might be seeing? Because I don't know how it's showing up on your screen. Let me switch over. Right now, I'm not in the tool mode. So I don't see a green line. Now there's this handle right here that comes off of that node. And that handle is part of your curve. I don't know if that's appearing green on your screen or if it's something that shows up when we go into the tool, resize slots. So, okay, so that's green. That whole section there is green. All right. And so until the whole thing is appearing as green, everything is green until we start putting in the parameters. 2.91. Actually, we'll do 4.5. So I think that's the actual tab height. And we're going to make it 5. And we're going to say 4.5 tab. Yeah. So there's a green line right there. I was talking about the green line just above the right side of the slot. You have to zoom in quite a bit. So there, if Everything is green until you start selecting things when you're in that resize slots and selection tool. So hit cancel and go into the tool. All of it's green. And then whenever you select it, they're showing you what's going to move. So everything that's green is staying the same. Anything that's not green is actually changing. So it's moving from those 2 points down. So here it's actually moving further than this side because it's not moving from up here, it's moving from down here. So that might be what you were seeing there, Sharon, was that green line. And if we zoom in really tight, you can see there's some funky things going on. And then at one time, there was another node, insert a node, right? I'm not in node editing. Cancel, node editing, enter, insert. And there was that strange node that was right over there. So now let's go in there and tools, resize slots and selection, tab height. So there you've got that funkiness going on right there. That might have been what you were seeing and referring to. But everything is green when you're in the resize slots and selection tool, except for the part of your design that's going to be moving. Hopefully, Sharon, that's what you were referring to and what you were asking about. Original effects copy along path and text, or the origin. Yeah, the origin affects copy along path and text on path 2. And that's really a good point, Mark, because a lot of folks, whenever you're doing your copy or you're applying text to path and you've got a circle and you've got everything, it's all up here, and all of a sudden your text is over there. What? It's because that's where your origin's at. Your origin is what affects where that gets lined up, and that's why you have to rotate your objects sometimes to get your text where you want it to be, because your origin is not where the optimum place to begin with. And just for giggles, because why not? Because why not? Just for giggles, let's look at what he's talking about. If we have a man, my mouse is not cooperating today. Selector tool. There we go. Circle. Now, go into node editing. That's funky. So there are no nodes because it's not a path. It's a perfect circle. And if I go, but if I put text up here, and I'm going to apply that text to that path, I align it to the center and the top. So they're centered up. Now I want to actually align that to the path, apply path to text. See there? It didn't wrap it around here from the center. It wrapped it from down here. But when I went to node editing to look for nodes, it didn't show you where the origin node was because there are no nodes. So Control Z, I'm going to convert this to a path. And now go to nodes. And see, there's our node. Our origin node is over here. And where I'm telling my text to align is in the middle and the middle. And so I'm going to move that origin node up here the top by simply rotating it 90 degrees. And now when I look at my node, there's my node up there. And now you've seen a second ago when I applied this text to that path, it put it around here. Now let's see where it goes. Select the text, hold shift, select the path, right click, apply, and there it's got it. It changed it, obviously. And if I'm like, okay, well, now I want that to be upright up top, then I have to rotate it. Now my origin is down here at the bottom. But your origin node, as you just said, it will affect where your text gets applied to the path. All right, done. Probably just me, but I thought slots and tabs needed 4 and only 4 tabs to be recognized. 4 nodes. I thought there were more, if more than, I think that's what Sharon and I were saying. Now I have always said you need 4 nodes. You need 4 nodes to make a slot, and you need 4 tabs to make a slot. And I've always said that those 4 nodes need to be parallel or perpendicular to each other in order to be perfectly perpendicular, perfectly parallel, in order for it to recognize it as a slot and a tab. But that's they don't. I shouldn't say they have to be, but when I'm designing, I try to make sure that that's what they are. There are cases where it will work without having 4 nodes, and this design is one of them. This flawed design, when I use the scissor tools, is one of them. In fact, I'm going to try and replicate it here. This is untested, but we're going to test being able to move it with 3 nodes and not 4. Because I've always been one to say you need 4 nodes to make a tab and 4 nodes to make a slot, parallel, perpendicular. Let's try to create one with 3. This is untested. Let's see what happens. So selecting all that. So if I've got in fact, I'm not even going to use well, you can. I'll use a square or a rectangle. Now there are no nodes here, but I'll convert it to a path. So I've got nodes. Go to my node editing tool. So there's 4. And I'm going to come in here. And first, actually, you know what? Let's just create one. Control D, duplicate that, shrink it down. Align it to the right. And then subtract that. And now you've got a slot there. And if we go back into nodes, there you got 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes to make that slot. But what was happening on that other piece, in fact, let's not make it a slot. Let's make it a tab. And Alt-Shift-H, weld that together. All right, and now we go back to nodes again. Still got 4 nodes here. But on that other tab a minute ago, there was an oddball tab. There was only 3 nodes on there, and it was wanting to move it. How was that doing that? I told you this was untested. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to come. No, how did that do that? It obviously in that design. In fact, I'll show you right there, right here. Is this still the original? Yeah. That distance from here to here, there's 1, 2, and 3 on that bottom corner, because there's not a 4th one here. But it was wanting to move that side of it out like that was a tab. Right now my brain is fried and I can't replicate that exact same scenario outside of that treble clef, but that was 3 nodes and it was moving it like a tab. In my design work, I try to make sure I've only got 4 nodes and they are perfectly parallel and perpendicular to each other. And I use a 5th node to break it up so that it identifies it only as a tab or a slot. But that is not an absolute statement. Others have pointed out to me before, it's like, no, you don't have to have 4. And I think even Chris has tested that theory, and Chris probably have already chimed in on here. In fact, he has. It's 4 consecutive nodes that need to be in position. But Chris, there was it was moved to move those 3 nodes in that design. That there was 3 nodes. There was 2 nodes that were perfectly parallel to each other, and then a third node that was only 2/100ths of a millimeter inside that line, and it was recognizing. So it was almost a funky little 7 shape, but it was recognizing that funky little 7 shape as a node and wanting to move that entire side out like it was its own tab. Um, is that it? That's it. That's it. So here we go. All right. So there's where I was just making this. Let's grab this. And I'm going to move these 2 tabs in here. There we go. So now I have 4 consecutive nodes like Chris was just saying. Let's select that. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Those 4 are consecutive. This length is much longer than this length. And if I measure this length, 25.69 millimeters, 25.69. Go to my resize tool. Old material thickness is 25.69. And my new material thickness is going to be, let's go half that, say 13. Tab height is not changing anything. Slot width is not changing anything. I would have thought that it would have recognized from there to there to there and moved from there out, because that's what it did on that other piece. That is weird. Cancel that. 3969. Tools, resize slots and selection. 39.69. 45. Tab height. Yeah. So there's 4 consecutive nodes with varying distances and lengths there, and it's not recognizing that as a tab from either one of those links. Let's make a crazy adjustment there. What's our maximum tolerance? 10? Nope. 9? Nope. 5? Yep. Tolerance of 5 mil. Don't work. All right. So that idea, I can't replicate the same thing that was happening in my own design, because that's what was happening. You had 3 nodes that made up that one section that wanted to move it like a tab, and I just tried to replicate it and it didn't work. I don't know. Yeah, that would be good, Chris. That would be, I think that would be very, very wise. In fact, actually, you know what? Yeah, in the menu settings, you would have the option of having, you maybe you could turn on the advanced options. So you would have to be advanced enough with LightBurn to know to go in, find that, turn it on, and then people opting to have that as an option. Hopefully they know what they're doing. They're not going to be creating problems for themselves that they're then complaining that LightBurn don't work because they turn something on they don't understand. Yeah, I like that. Yep, I like that idea. And Jack says, I agree in this case. I'm not sure what you agree with there, Jack, because you probably posted that 5 minutes ago and I was on a tear and don't know. But I'm glad you agree, I think. Let's see here. Yeah, Jer, it's 2025. Everything's something else. Everybody's identifying as something else. Swanee. Wow. Well, thank you, Robert. I'm And Gillette says the same thing. Uh, I, Chris, that'd be a question for you. Any update on Mill Mage? You know, I I'll believe it when I see it, and I don't believe anything I hear until I see it because I've been told so many different things. Nothing new in the last week from Chris there regarding Mill Mage. Um, uh, yeah, and there's a private another conversation going on there between Chris and Robert, and a lot of people getting ready for LBX, so LBX that's got their attention. And then Robert said, "What is LBX?" So LBX is the LightBurn experience. This year it's going to be in New York City, I think. Is that right, Chris? So if you're in the New England area and New York is not out of your purview, or it's not a ridiculous travel distance, and you can afford to either go and stay in New York City, or it's close enough proximity that you don't have to stay overnight, uh, get over to the LightBurn website and find out their dates and all that. Yeah, they have some really good speakers there, and they talk about the new things that are coming and show you stuff you may not have ever seen before. And it was an interesting experience. I went last year because it was in Illinois. Was it East Peoria, or wherever it was at? It was in the middle of the country. Wasn't terribly expensive. It was a long drive. I drove, but it was affordable. And but I went to see Mill Mage, only to be disappointed that it didn't come out. So maybe they'll have it ready for this year. Who knows? Who knows? But it's a great time to be able to see some of the faces. I don't know who all will be there this year, but a lot of the folks you see here on YouTube, will be there, and you get to rub elbows with some of the folks. I will not be going this year. Can't afford to. Chris says tabs need 4 equal and opposite slots can have unequals. Well, that was a tab on the other, and it only had 3. If you have the original file for the music easel, which I believe you do, if you look at that funky little node that's 2/100ths of a millimeter inside, that one plus the one that's 2/100ths of a millimeter away from it, and the one directly underneath it, only 3. Those 3, the 2, these are one above each other. They're one on top of another. So they're parallel and perfectly positioned one above the other. The other one's only 2/100ths of a millimeter inside and up. And those 3, from what I can see, LightBurn is perceiving those as a tab, because when you're changing the tab, or is what is it? Yeah, tab height. It's moving the tab height down from but it's also moving those 3 outward, because it's moving it in 2 directions. So the only way I can see that it's moving that out as a tab is it's only recognizing those 3. There's not 4 of them. I don't know. It's weird that it's doing what it's doing. Very weird. I changed the tolerance, and I'm looking back and at all the different comments, and Jerry, you've been in the stream a few times, so I don't know if you're. Anytime you guys have got comments and you want me to see them and make sure that I'm put those exclamation points out in front, like Jack done here. That way I know you're talking to me and not talking to someone else in the stream. But just in case, Jared says if you add a small square on the bottom and boolean it to then add another square on it, would that work for the top? It's a lot of there. I'm burnout right now. I'm not following 100% where you're going with that. I did change the tolerance and tried to move things up and get the results I was looking for, and never got that to recreate the other. It's not the nodes, it's what it's attached to. It's attached to a shape that's going to be cut out. Yeah. In the design, it must have been treating it as a slot rather than a tab, maybe. It's like, because it's in tab height, Chris. It's in tab height, and it's changing. Because if you got I had the tolerance set at 4.5 mil, and I'll pull it up again here, and it was changing the tab height, moving it down like it should, but it was also moving one side of that piece out. Like that one side was its own separate tab, but when you delete that tab up there, that's only 0.02 of a millimeter, delete it, then that movement goes away. So that 0.02 of a millimeter inside that made that one plus the other two was making it appear to be a tab, or it was that one, the 4 consecutive ones, but one of those 4 was only 0.02 of a millimeter away from the other one. And then the fourth one way down at the other side was, 4 or 5 or 2.9 millimeters away. Yeah, it was weird. You just have to look at that and see. Maybe the sides have to be equal to be recognized. Well, no, because one was, that's what I'm saying, it's 0.02 of a millimeter at the top and 2.9 millimeters at the bottom, and it was wanting to move that whole thing out. It's weird. Yeah, Miss Gigi's in the house. Oh, I said her name. She's going, what? Oh, yeah. They're talking about you in here. Maybe it's not moving out. It was no, Peter. It was doing both. It was moving. In fact, I'll pull it up again. It was moving down and out. All right. Good. Chris says, I'm going to do a deep dive on this. Somehow you broke LightBurn. Well, unfortunately, it wouldn't be the first time. But it was not that I broke LightBurn. It's just something that I did, and something that I may have done incorrectly, that LightBurn went, eh. But let's go back over here again, and then I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to jump off here. We're 2 hours. So get back over here to the original, cancel this, delete that. So this is the original. In fact, let's just grab just this piece. I'm going to pull just that piece out of here, because that's what we're working with. If we go into nodes, you can see there's that piece. And from that node to this node is 0.02 of a millimeter. And let's look at the height. It was 4.5. No, it's 4. That's 4. So from that node to the bottom is 4 millimeters. And from that node, that second node right there, that's why it was there, was so I could have equal distance from here and here. Those are both 4 millimeters. So when I change the 4 millimeter height of that tab, you're going to expect it to go down. If I want that tab to be from 4 to 5 millimeters, then you're going to expect it to go down this direction 1 millimeter, and not expecting anything to happen over here. So resize slots and selection, tab height, 4 millimeters. And there you go. It's changing. It's moving that. And we want to go to 5 millimeters. That's what I want. And slot or tolerance. All right. So nothing's happening there, but slot width, nothing's happening there. Now, what I do different this time? Maybe it was doing 2.91. 5, increase that tab height. All right, maybe it has to be inside of that. Could that be it? Because I was having it move in 2 directions a minute ago. Grab that. Tools, resize slots and selection. Tab height. You know what? I'm going to start from scratch because I know I'm not crazy. Well, I know I ain't mistaken. I might be a little bit touched. But let's get rid of all of this. Bring that back in. File, recent projects, easel. Let's grab just this piece. Bring it over here. Nothing's grouped. Resize slots and selection tool. Tab height. There you go. See? Look. See? 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 I ain't crazy. I ain't crazy. It's moving in two directions off of tab height. Strictly tab height. You expect it to move down. And if it's going to move, if it was changing the width, it would move in both directions, this side and that side. But since it's only moving this side, then there's something about the location and the proximity of that little bitty, and that's the node that's causing it. Because if I go in here to that node, say cancel, node editing, and get rid of that one node, and go back into, just go right back into resize slots and selection, tab height, it's only moving down. So getting rid of that one node, stop that. And I cannot, I was trying to recreate that problem a second ago and was not able to do so. I don't know. Very interesting. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for being here. The tolerance was bring the fourth node into effect. They were talking about making tabs same as slots, but they didn't say it was going to be in the last update. Yeah. But why is it only okay? But why I was trying to recreate that a second ago, but could not get it. I couldn't recreate it in that funky little design I was going. No, it wasn't only moving down. Yep, no, it was moving. All right. Could it be the tolerance is too large? Well, it's not that it's too large. The tolerance, by increasing the tolerance, it was allowing it to include other nodes that then allowed that to happen. But what the point I was trying to make was that they did not have to, that shows that they did not have to be perfectly parallel and perpendicular to each other. You know, and that's what I used to say all the time is, and I still like to, you know, if as long as they're parallel and perpendicular to one another, you have a node or you have a tab or a slot. But that just demonstrated that they do not have to be parallel and perpendicular to one another on all four corners. LightBurn will see them under the right circumstances, even if they're not. And there, the right circumstances was having that tolerance large enough to include the varying size lengths of the sides. I don't know. The tolerance setting sees two different tabs, one going down and one, yeah, and one going to the right. But the one going to the right, though, is what I'm saying is that's not a tab, and there's not four nodes that are parallel and to each other or perpendicular to each other even. Yeah, and the nodes, it's the lower left one that it's picking up on. It's four consecutive nodes, but they're not parallel because here's 0.02 of a millimeter from this one up here and here. And then what was it, 4 millimeters down, and then 2.9 millimeters over. So there was a variance of 2.89 millimeters between the length of those two sides, but it didn't matter. LightBurn was detecting those as 4 consecutive nodes and creating a slot or a tab where that wasn't even a tab. All right, guys. Have a very great weekend. I wish everybody an awesome week next week. It's going to be an interesting week for me. We'll leave it at that. And wish everybody well. Wish everybody the best. Say a prayer for me. And I was not a hobo. I did not practice what I preach. I was bad this week, and I did something I shouldn't have done. And now I'm got to pay a price for my stupidity. And so wish us luck. Let's see here. Steve says any 2 points are perpendicular. Yeah, that's why I was saying perfectly perpendicular, because I like saying perfectly perpendicular. Any 2 points are perpendicular, but not necessarily parallel with other. I just like saying perfectly perpendicular and parallel. I like my piece. Yeah, well, Chris, didn't know where it was going this week, other than I just knew I had a problem and I was wanting to share what I ran into. And collaborations like this is how we learn. It's how we figure stuff out. And I enjoy like I said, the design would not exist if it wasn't a request from somebody who said, hey, can you make something to do something like that? And I did, and it worked. But I won't make a design that has an inner slot like that again. I'll stay away from that completely. But I've determined that, yes, we do need tab width as an option, even if it's in an advanced option mode. Jay says, add a similar bump out on the other side of the slot. I bet if you did, it'd probably show up in all 3 directions. Yep, you're probably right, Jay. All right, guys. If you were late to the stream, I'll just recap it one more time. There is a special offer for this weekend only. If you go over to hobowithwood.com and I click on the top menu page for the Adopt a Hobo, you'll see the options where you can donate to the Hobo with Wood cause, help support the efforts here. I've got a one-time one this weekend only. If you, whatever the amount you donate to support a hobo, I will make you a special coupon code 3 times the amount of your donation for digital file downloads. So if you donate $10, I will send you a coupon for $30 that you can go in and download $30 worth of files, digital files on the website. 3 times the amount of your donation for free digital files. And you would want, and it'd be a one-time use coupon. So you would want, if you donate $5 and you get $15, you want to put in $15 or $16 worth of items and apply that coupon, and it'll all be wiped off at once. You cannot run cannot have a balance carryover. So you want to use it all at one shot. But if you're watching in the live stream now, and if you watch this on a replay and you see it, and it's prior to Monday, which would be the 24th. If it's prior to the 24th and you make your donation prior to March 24th, I'll make you a coupon code good for 3 times your donation. And I would appreciate it greatly. God bless each and every one, and we'll see you all next week, I hope. Y'all have a good week.